Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Educator Livestream. I'm Tom, your host this week. With me also is Mr. Louis Cataldi, who will
Hello.
be sitting in the co-host chair this week. He will be in charge of pushing all of the buttons on the stream deck and keeping all of you in chat in line. Uh, Thank you for joining us. We've got a really cool stream this week. We are welcoming a couple of our content authors from our Unreal Online Learning platform, our web-based learning and training platform that hopefully all of you have used a little bit. And if you haven't, you'll be pretty well exposed to it today. So we're here to talk a little bit about the online learning platform, but really we're here to talk about our experiences and share our knowledge about creating learning resources for Unreal Engine, because it's kind of challenging to do. And we've got a lot of educators in the audience that watch. We ourselves are educators, and we create a lot of stuff at Epic. So this is a really great opportunity for us to share our experiences creating these learning resources and share some of the stuff that we're working on. So without further ado, let me please welcome Mr. Deepak Chetty and Mr. Justin Molman. Say
Hello.
hi to the
Hey
folks.
guys, how's it
Hello,
going?
folks. How's everyone doing?
So happy to have you guys here. So you both work as content developers, educators on our online learning team. So for those that don't know, we have a website, learn.unrealengine.com, that is a fully fledged learning and training platform where we've got lots of courses that you can take to an Unreal Engine. So Justin and Deepak have been working at Epic for a while now, creating this content, and it's always a really interesting challenge to develop this stuff for such a dynamic application as Unreal. So we've brought you guys on to talk about that and pick your brains a bit about it, and also to share with everybody kind of how we approach this, and to open up that dialogue a bit. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you guys to introduce yourself. Deepak, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and what you're up to now at Epic Games.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Deepak Chetty. I am a filmmaker. That's what I was trained in. I got my bachelor's in film from a place called Pratt Institute in New York. Worked in the industry for a little bit, sort of bounced all over the place. I did doc camera work, motion graphics for television, worked on my own projects. Eventually, I decided that, I just didn't have the type of handle on narrative that I wanted to have at that point in my life as a filmmaker. So I decided to go back to school. So I got my master's in filmmaking from University of Texas of Austin, where I actually teach now, assistant professor of practice there. And one of the things that I did there as a student was I told myself, especially if I was going back to school, that all the projects that I was going to work on, anything that I was going to spend my time on, would be projects worthy of giving up the career that I had in the film and television industry. So I would never sort of look back and say like, hey, I could have made these projects on the weekend, by myself or with my friends. So what that led me to do is really search for new technologies for filmmaking and emerging technology. While I was at UT, we actually had a program called UT3D, one of the first and only stereoscopic filmmaking that existed in the world, honestly. It has since been folded into our emergent cinematic arts program, but when I was there, my thesis film was a film called Hard Reset, and it was a sci-fi action movie. It was basically a pilot. Shot it in 3D, did all the VFX myself. And my real-time journey, I didn't know it yet, but it started there because it took me 6 weeks to render that movie. and on one computer. And I sort of said, like, I can't do this ever again. Like, I'm not going to do this ever again. I need to start figuring out, this is around 2014, 2015. I was like, I really need to start figuring out what's coming down the pipeline. What's going to help me as an independent filmmaker. I don't have studio backing. I'm making my own content, with my small core team of people. And that led me to Epic and to Unreal. I started using the software mainly for previs. I started folding it into my classes. I started teaching at UT in 2015. And basically what I started doing was I started adapting our film curriculum to using the engine for things like previs, physically accurate settings, all sorts of stuff like that, teaching basic concepts, even cinematography through the engine in ways that, in the past we could only really do in person on a stage. And that's how I actually got hooked up with Epic. I met Lewis and Tom when they came to visit campus, went to one of the meetings, and we sort of hit it off. And they put me in touch with some people at Epic. I guess had realized that I'd been teaching these classes for, at that point, about 3 years, using the engine for filmmaking, and that's how I got involved in Epic. So for me, it's really been my motivation for real-time filmmaking has been out of this desire to also empower creators who are individuals, so not just studios but individuals, down onto the student or the hobbyist, to basically allow their stories to be more ambitious, more wild, utilizing the newest and sort of the democratized technology, which I think is what our platform is providing.
Yeah, I remember when we visited and you were telling us about your program and how you were using it, and you told us a story that previously in your first semesters or when you were just introducing students to cinematography and rendering on the computer, at the end of the semester the expectation was that they would come up with a single rendered still,
right?
Because that's to get to that point, to teach the software, the rendering and everything, and then actually wait for the rendering. That's kind of
it was a
expect.
still or it was a shot. Yeah,
usually
that was the terminus of that.
And then with real time, the expectation is now a complete, it's no longer just a shot. You can have a full animation.
Yeah, you can make
you can incorporate, you can incorporate audio and music and depth of field and the things that you maybe wouldn't have even started to touch upon in your first or second semesters. And that really demonstrates it for the individual, for the small studio. The technology really does unlock
because the approach
potential
to teaching it is the same way I would be teaching this if we were using practical equipment. And I think that's what's beautiful about this, because the expectation used to be you might have a shot, you might put together a reel of stuff you've worked on, because we also do a lot of VFX at UT. But our main background is strong narrative filmmaking, whether it be fiction or nonfiction. And so there was always that little bit of disappointment when the first iterations of the class existed, where people would come out and you can tell a story in a still image, like we all know that. But for these film students, like, they wanted to actually make a movie. And I think that's when Unreal really changed the game in terms of what we were able to do. I mean, we've had these student films play at festivals, including South by. So it really was sort of like, it was a huge shift, even in regards to our expectation of what was possible. And I think the students, the class has become more popular than ever because of that, because we're a large state school. Well, not every undergrad gets to make a thesis. They go to film school because the class is so large. So this is just another outlet for them to create a full-on narrative piece. And especially for the types that are more, technologically inclined, like I was, who maybe would rather work with completely digital assets opposed to practical assets. They can still take all the knowledge that they've gained from the practical cinematography class, the editing classes, stuff in terms of directing act, and bring that into this, especially with the new developments with actors and stuff like that. Touch on
one of the things that I think impressed me or still is present in my mind is that when we came to visit you, it must have been already, 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And, Tom and I have been doing this for a while, and we are used to going to computer graphics programs and to game programs. And so when we went to UT Austin there, we went to visit the computer graphics program and, and the game program, and they came and said, you need to go and meet Deepak and see what he's doing in the film program, which I think to us was a little unusual because 2 or 3 years ago, there were not a lot of film programs teaching Unreal Engine at the time. So we knew of a couple, but it was not surprising, but it was still relatively unusual for us to go to a large state university and find a film program teaching Unreal Engine, especially at a level where students were deep with their hands into it, doing real-time filmmaking in Unreal Engine. Now it's not as unusual because virtual production is becoming more commonplace, and the curriculums for virtual production are very exciting to a lot of large academic institutions because the demand is really high. So when we came back to Epic, we started talking about the work that you were doing, and we started talking to Unreal Online Learning and saying, you guys need to start working with Deepak, and started talking to the virtual production folks about the things you were doing, the outcomes you were getting from your students, and some of the films that you were doing, and started really sharing the enthusiasm for really the focus that was being put at a large state university on filmmaking with Unreal Engine, because it was pretty meaningful, especially since we could peek under the curtain and see that demand was going to be there across many, many large academic institutions. We were seeing it already as a demand for Unreal Online Learning because the user community needed it and wanted it, and people that knew how to look at curriculum as a whole and say, well, how do we teach this stuff? Was already a very emerging demand coming across all avenues. So yeah, it was lucky that we started
forever
working
grateful
together.
for that meeting. So thank you. It was wonderful
absolutely.
to meet you guys.
Well, so now at Epic, you're developing content for our online learning platform, and I'm assuming you're doing stuff that's film focused. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm the track producer for film, TV, and virtual production. It's sort of all under one category right now.
Cool.
And our major goal for 2021 is to get the foundation and essential training out. We have a lot of courses coming out that I think going to be super beneficial for people in academia, but then also individuals, hobbyists, and even up to studio people who are trying to just get the basics. So what we're really trying to do is transfer. It's almost like the way that you would learn filmmaking in general. If you were learning how to make a practical film, we're taking that same methodology and translating it into the engine because outside of the interface and outside of the sort of things that are exclusive to the engine, which is terminology, systems, some idea of the interactivity that can go into filmmaking, which we cover in the course that I'll present a little bit later on. There's so many similarities to the way that you would approach teaching something like cinematography, where we talk about picking what camera do you want to use, like the sensor it is, figure out what sort of lenses we want to work with, horizontal field view in, we turn on exposure, we start framing stuff up, doing measurements. I treat it the exact same way as I would treat it if I was doing it in real life on a stage with, even with lighting, it's very similar. Like the engine affords such capability to create those analogs to where, even people with like the hardest thing that I find sometimes Unreal, and this is once again why we're going to go back to basics in 2020 and really lay the foundation so a lot more dynamic and forward thinking content a little bit, is a lot of filmmakers, especially if they're not VFX, we want filmmakers to them to learn it. The thing that they struggle with the most is navigating the board, because a lot of them are working in 2D programs that have no depth, no third dimension, right? They're used to NLEs where X, Y, left to right, you're working on a timeline, there's no depth, they're not going in, even if they've worked in After Effects. A lot of the people that I end up teaching have done a lot of motion graphics. There's fake 3D there, but once they get that done and then they start realizing the vocabulary that's similar, the concepts that are similar, the way that you can pilot the camera, almost look through the viewfinder, frame it up, it's almost like a switch flips, and then they sort of realized immediately that if they are honest with themselves, they understand. This is why people like Justin are great too with the art side and the asset side. That if they collaborate or they're willing to sort of give themselves a little bit of a budget, they can make some incredible things that just would not be possible in live action. The short that I'll show a little bit of that's in the independent filmmaking with Unreal Engine course that's on UOL, the online learning platform. It's made with 100% free assets. Everything in that short was made for something you can get for free on the marketplace. That was sort of the goal, and just making sure that what we're doing in terms of how we're teaching people and the learning paths that we're leading them on is sort of analogous, I think, to real world film education. Like if in any other capacity, even outside of the engine, as long as those things line up, that means that there's so many resources out there that can be shared. It's like I could tell someone to go read a book on cinematography, and it's going to make just as much sense to them practically as it would the engine. And to me, that's sort of the goal: laying down the groundwork, then we can really start doing some incredible next level stuff.
Very, very cool. It's very cool, and it speaks to something that we wanted to talk about, is that when we're looking at our own education content, we've become very aware that one size doesn't fit all, and we often try to do at Epic as much as we can with as little as we can. and so we really wanted to optimize and try and create like the fundamentals for everyone. But it became, as we've learned more about how people learn Unreal, as Unreal has grown, and each kind of feature set has become more mature and more focused on kind of its vertical. And you can go much deeper into each one of these kind of feature sets, that even the fundamentals really needed to be in the right language. Whether we're talking to someone developing for games or cinematography or visualization, their background is so important to developing that content. I know when I wrote my book on visualization, it was very hard for me to get in the mindset of someone who hadn't been doing this for a long time, because I had been doing visualization for well over a decade and like 5 years in Unreal. And so it was difficult for me to even remember what that personality was. And it took a long time to really find my voice to help talk to that individual that had a certain background and certain set of expectations even for the software. And so it's something that we've become really aware of, and it's really key that even at this, like when you're just starting out, if you can talk in the right language, it can make that adoption of Unreal, because Unreal is massive and super complicated, and it's got all these moving parts. But if there's something that people can relate to and have a real world analog, or something that their experience and their background, it'll help them click with it and help them see it, I think as a tool rather than this like huge learning challenge.
Yeah, no,
much faster.
I totally agree. And I think, some of the ways in which we do that through the way I teach it a lot, is I impose restrictions that would exist in real life. So basically when we talk about lighting and when we talk about camera placement, one of the things I do at first, because then the gates will open eventually. They can do whatever they want. They can 200 cameras in wherever. But the initial teaching is basically, all right, riggable positions. The cameras can't be in each other's eye line. You cannot have lights that would exist invisibly in the frame. Let's start to think about how we would use this if we were planning for a real shoot. And we'll start thinking about, ways, and, because it'll make it a lot easier for us to relate to it, right? Because we know the limitations in reality. And then what's really fun is after they've gotten annoyed with me for basically telling them that that's how they have to do it, even though they know that they want, we then we let go of that. And then it's literally like we're into orbit. Like they can do whatever they put a camera on the underside of a vehicle, going 200 miles per hour or like literally inside somebody's head. And that's, I totally agree. Like having the analog as the baseline though helps onboard people so much faster because you're not having to abstract anything. They can make those connections like immediately. And I think the way in which I mean, even before I joined the team, the way in which the learning material was going was already in that direction. So it was so much easier to prescribe things for people asking like, hey, how do I get started? Because the very intro level foundations is pretty much the same for everyone until you start branching off or going into your own direction. But yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more on having it very clear and concrete what those analogies are, so people get an immediate personal understanding. Because once they go in too, right? It's like it's not only like guys not the limit anymore. It's like it's a sandbox. I mean, you can start doing anything.
Yeah.
I know a lot of filmmakers now who have gotten into procedural creation, like in for environments and stuff like even creating complicated blueprints that serve as their actor, that they can assign logic to help optimize or to help basically automate certain things inside of their. So, the engine, is more than just a recording medium. If you like that was the analog that a lot of people were using for a while, including myself, and I still think it's a little bit viable to say it that way, but I used to treat Unreal as like the camera. Until I started going, a little bit deeper into sequencer and putting together edits in here, I would treat Unreal as my footage generation, the same way I would treat a camera. It was the medium, if you will. So I would take the footage and I would edit it somewhere else. But now with everything getting a little bit more robust in the realm of sequencer, and of course for offline workflows, render queue, I mean, it's the best it's ever been right now, and it's very exciting to see what's on the horizon and know how we're going to integrate that into learning.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, what you're saying is, like, one of your students will open sequencer for a very different reason than one of Justin's students.
Absolutely.
Or one of my students. And also it's interesting too, because you bring up like, you used to just like render footage and then edit it somewhere else. And that also speaks to that Unreal started off as a video game engine made by video game developers to make video games, and everything else was bonus. And we've realized that we can kind of do both in the engine. We can build this amazing game engine, but we can also build these other tools like sequencer and Datasmith, etc., to be professional tool sets in their own right.
Absolutely.
And that's something that's really unique in Unreal World, because our tool does so many things, and we are interested in it being world class for all of those. So I want to bring Justin into the conversation because hi Justin.
I don't want to disrupt.
Stop doing your homework and join us on the stream.
You guys are like
kidding. Welcome to the stream. So Justin, your background and what you're covering for us is more on the game side. Am I correct?
Yep.
I don't want to put words in your mouth or tell everyone where you came from, but I will say.
Yeah.
So let's introduce everyone to Mr. Justin Molman.
Well, I've been doing this. Thank you for having me. I've been doing games for over 18 years now. I started actually almost close to 19. I started on PlayStation 1. Which has been crazy because it's PlayStation 5 now. It's nuts. I did some.
So you're 5 years old now.
Exactly. Yeah. So like,
congratulations.
Like, yeah. It's gonna be crazy to see like when I'm in my 80s, like which PlayStation 12. But no, my introduction to Unreal was around in 2004. I remember I was working at a studio called High Voltage, and I knew a couple people that were working at Midway Games, specifically a teacher I had back in the day named Brian McRae. Rad dude, really rad dude. He actually like helped me get my foot in the door for a lot of studios. And I remember that I got hit up to go work on the Mortal Kombat team, and I was geeking out. And that was blowing my mind. But then there was this other team that was behind closed doors working on something that was going to be for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. It was the Stranglehold team. And that was my first exposure. I mean, I played video games growing up, and I've heard of Unreal, and I was like, oh, Unreal Tournament. That's all I thought about it. That's all. But then when I saw Unreal 3,
Stranglehold, one of the first UE3 release titles.
Yeah, and I saw it before all that massive D was introduced. So like the original, like the kitchens and seeing all the reflections, I was like,
destruction, full destruction in that game was amazing.
Was this John Woo's Stranglehold?
Yeah,
it was amazing.
So I got that was my first project working on Unreal 3.
Chicago studio. That's why you know that was a Chicago studio, right?
Exactly. And it was crazy because before then, a lot of the tips and tricks that we were doing
Xbox, that was Xbox One. Yep.
Yeah. But a lot of the tips and tricks we were doing, I didn't really know that much about normal maps. Our specular maps were super generic, and then you go to this amazing tool that was like allowing you. I just remember being able to plug in and have normals and have the light reacting to it, and just being able to click and drag. And I've used proprietary software that was like engines that were made in-house at other studios. This just blew my mind. Even when I was in the Mortal Kombat team originally, I started working. We were using RenderMan. It was some sort of other engine, and then this just blew my mind. So I started using that, and then I loved it. That sold me on that studio. I worked at Midway for a while, and then we kind of took Unreal and we Frankensteined it. It was Unreal 3, correct me if I'm wrong, it was more geared to be like a first person 30 frames per second experience. And we're like, no, we're gonna make it so it's a third person and you can blow up everything. I remember they like hacked it together, and I just remember like cutting up assets, putting fake fake collision, giving fake physics, and then I left and I went to Raven Software, and then that's when they're like, we've got the new Unreal, and they fixed everything you just spent doing. And I was like, oh my God. So it was like a click of the button to use Fracture, I think it was, and I was like, super. So, and then I ever since Midway, I've been using Unreal to some extent. I used it when I was at Raven. I used it on Singularity, we used it for a really cool way to like make like, time distort, and like it was kind of like grabbing some of those, that was a fun project. That was a good one. And we did like a lot of Havoc, like physics.
That's a lot of custom coding back then.
Yeah, it was nuts. And then even before that, I was working on it with the X-Men Wolverine game because we were using it for that stuff. But I just remember just geeking out on how easy it was to take content that you created and put it inside the engine, like the instancing, the light just being so like it looked like with minimal effort, because I'm an artist by trade. Minimal effort, your stuff just looked amazing. And I bounced around a couple studios in between that. Like I was at Activision for 6 years. I did some stuff at smaller studios at Disney for a while.
You're talking about 2005, 2006, 2007.
Yeah, so I was those were the Midway years, and then the Ravensoft years were like 2007, 2010, and I did another one where we were using like Softimage, and I was just the whole time I was using content, we were building it. I was like, I wish we were just using Unreal, because when you go to a studio and they're not using Unreal, you're like, oh man, I wish you were using Unreal. This would be so
especially on the art side, yes.
Oh God, but then when Unreal 4 came around, and then it just introduced all like the real time, like just like the HDRI, the physically based rendering, and like just the like getting rid of the specular map and introducing roughness and metallic and being able to tweak things even more. It was insane.
The transition to physically based workflows, when it first came out, and people were not sure, right? Because it was introduced in the film industry, and then when it came to games, people were like, I don't know, maybe not. And then people actually saw it when the Don't Not stuff came out, and those original games came out, and people were like, well, maybe this is a thing. We can just do it once, and it works both inside and outside, and we don't have to go and photograph things.
That was my
change
whole
the
demo.
materials.
Was just taking a chrome sphere and moving it from inside to outside, and
Yeah.
game
Counter
artists'
lighting.
minds would explode.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, look, there's no cube map in the material. And they're like,
And, you know, so
one material for all of the levels?
when I first got to Epic, you know, one of the people that I spent some time with, because we would exercise together, was Brian Karras, right? So Brian Karras is one of the lead engineers at Epic. He's one of the graphics programmers that, you know, was a big proponent and one of the guys that helped bring these workflows, you know, into UE4. And he's like, yes, this is, you know, and please forgive me, anyone on the rendering team, if I got that wrong. But, you know, I spent a lot of time talking to Brian about this, and well, not a lot of time, you know, we would exercise and we would talk about it. And you know, this was just a thing that was so important to bring into Unreal Engine 4 a long time ago, and such a critical element that has made all the physically based workflows, well, helped make all the physically based workflows so
All right.
important to what you were talking about, the analog, right? The analog cameras, the analog of everything that makes it so that someone can take what they know and just bring it into the engine and say, well, I already know this. Why don't I see if cameras work the same way they do in the real world?
Right.
Well, why? They happen to work the same way. And the same thing is true for lights. Well, they just happen to work the same way. And, you know, materials work the same way. So I can take what I understand about the real world, bring it into Unreal, and I don't have to relearn how things work. I can just understand how to utilize the tool to take my knowledge and make it work, right? And so from an artist perspective, what you're talking about, Justin, that makes an
great.
enormous difference. Because
I
in the
remember-
UE3 days, that was not the case.
Well, I
This
remember
makes
reading-
me realize how much I took for granted, by the way.
No, so here's going to make you think even worse. So before I was doing Unreal 3, even we started talking about reflections, I remember when I was making content for like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, I would literally, if I was making a reflection, I would have to make a version of the room or geometry and mirror it and make it lower res and make the ground see-through to give the fake thing. And so I was like, oh, which, you know, it makes you more resourceful, but then you get a tool like this, it's like, and the one thing that like, so I kept on doing Unreal stuff, and then, you know, I've been teaching for 14 years along the way too, which was a trip because, you know, I started teaching when I was younger than a lot of students, and it was fun to do. But I think, you know, what made me really enjoy teaching was I'd get my hands on Unreal 3, for example, and I'd want to scream it from the rooftop, like, hey, you need to learn how to do this. And I'd see people using the tool, and I know that the way I use it, it's not particularly the best way for some people, but the way that I like to use Unreal is I feel like with the lighting, the ability to, etc., it's great for telling stories, and it's something I think people don't, you know, I'm an environment artist, so I feel like when I'm looking at games and even movies, and you can walk through a space and, you know, the person's not darting through it, but they're stopping and they're looking at it and they're trying to figure out who lives here, what happened here. That really, like, that gets me excited, because that's how I am when I'm just walking around everyday life. I like to see the little details, and I feel like with a tool like Unreal, it gives you the power to have like more geometry, higher textures, you know, use decals, blend, like everything in the artist toolkit allows you to build that base and then layer on all this history that can happen.
Yeah, and I think without getting into you know, trouble in the stream, that's the goals with Nanite and Lumen, right? Is to move into UE5 and to be able to layer those things in and to do more physically based workflows to say, you know, here's film res assets and here's more natural lighting, you know, and not have to do crazier things, but to invite more people into the tool set and to say, well, you know, just take what you use in film and take what you're used to from a lighting perspective and not have to reinvent more wheels, you know, bring your wheels in and let's do more stuff, you know. And once again, not to open up cans of worms, because it's coming real, you know, soon, but right.
Well, it basically,
that is, oh no, go ahead, Justin.
But it's like what you said, like I've, you know, seeing, because I've, you know, I'm well aware there's people way better at this stuff than me nowadays, but like I've been around for 5 console transitions and many development transitions, and I've seen every someone's like, oh, it's going to change everything. most of the time it doesn't really change everything because people get excited by all the tools that are out there, but then you have to rein it back in, and it's always, it's those like design elements and principles that people have to get, like the good composition, balance, backstory, color theory, everything else that goes into that. Because I like to tell, because when I'm talking to my students, like imagine I come in, like, or someone comes in and it's like, hey, you have a suitcase, you got to pack everything in this room that means something to you. We only have limited space to build these levels. And like when then you're going to give the player the control of the camera, and then we can't really control them most of the time, depending on the type of game. So you don't know how close they're going to get to something, what they're going to try to jump over.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to give everything this nice layer of detail, but also make sure that it's optimized enough that it can run without dropping the frame rate, and kind of giving them the freedom to do what they want and not anticipating what they're going to go up to. Because there's always going to be someone that's like, I found the back of this and there's a giant hole. And it's like, well, sometimes we have to cut things out for optimization.
Don't go back there.
Yeah, don't go back.
Somebody put in an invisible wall so the player can't get back there, please. Art bug fixed.
But I kept on using education stuff, and I kept running into Lewis just because I also work with the rookies, and I remember the very first time I ran into Lewis is I was actually interviewing to work for him at SCAD, but I kept in touch, and every single time I'd see him, I'd be like, hey, what's going on? I saw him, and we just always kept on.
Let's clarify this. I tried to hire you, and you were like, man.
No, it's because I didn't have a master's. But no, and we just always stayed in touch. And then like he introduced me to all the people at Epic, and he introduced me to Chris Murray and like Jenny Fowler and the whole team. And they've all took me under the wing, and they've allowed me to, like, they've given me the freedom to kind of be like, hey, we want you to take what you know about education and game development and build out a track. And I think the track that I've always been trying to build out has not been to really change the way things are going. I just want mine to be role based. I want mine to literally be, if you want to be an environment artist or a lighting artist, we want to create courses that show you the skills that you'll need to become one, and then have project based courses that give you the opportunity to test those skills out.
So for folks who are on the stream who don't know anything about our online learning platform, let's fill them in just a little bit. So our online learning platform, I'm sure it's been linked here, learn.unrealengine.com, is a video-based learning platform. So like your lynda.coms or LinkedIn Learning, whatever it's called this month. And so there we have. Can you describe kind of how these work? Are there just like a bunch of hour-long videos, or how is this broken down and organized? Like how do people deal with this?
When you go on the website, it's actually really nicely laid out in terms of you can choose like learning paths that you're interested in. There's ones that are like tagged for just getting started, ones that are underneath a certain time amount. I particularly, I'm not being biased because I work for Epic Unreal, but I really do enjoy the quality level because, we have a really great staff that takes a long time to really make sure that what we're putting out is not like it's thought through. There's a plan to it. We have a syllabus in some regards that we kind of like.
And it's definitive, out. Right? I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make the definitive information.
Yeah. And the way that it's handled too is like, we're doing more of the learning path to actually, give someone, hey, you start here and then you can go down this path. And the content itself is, we'll throw in little quizzes depending on what type of course it is. And it's not meant to like make you stuck. It's meant to make you think about what you just saw and how you can apply it to your own projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Murray now is saying the source of truth. I would agree with that completely. And I think, one thing that I've noticed too, especially on the film side, is we're on UOL right now. The film side of things are relatively new. We're just starting our big course push. In fact, 2021 is going to be we're going to have a big push for film, TV, and virtual production, online learning content. And one of the things that's been really cool to see, just talking to people, not only in academia or independent filmmakers, or people even in the industry, is that people are adopting the workflows that we are presenting. Even if they're workflows that have been created internally. And I think that gives us, this sense that, source of truth, all this information. But what it also does is it creates a baseline for people from all sorts of to sort of come together and understand what each other is doing and what each other's working on. One of the cooler courses I think that we have in the pipeline is something that Justin and I are actually collaborating on. Justin sort of pitched this idea of, what is the difference between creating an environment, a high quality, cinematic quality environment that could also be used not only for virtual production but for interactive. What are the thoughts and considerations that go into something like that? And, no matter what learning path you take on the online learning platform, there's so much convergence between all of our industries right now that, as long as we sort of are, I feel as long as we're being clear that, we're not confusing vocabulary or terminology or overall methodology. Somebody who's just interested in filmmaking could learn a lot from a games course that talks about materials, right? Because they can take that knowledge and they can apply it in their own way, and vice versa. Somebody whose career focus is games could take one of our cinematics and then understand in a much better way than they might have, before, how to really put that essence of cinema into their cutscenes, into the way that they produce their work.
I think I think that's like the whole goal too. Is, and I think that one thing we should note, and people might be like, there's content on YouTube, there's content. I'm not saying, we're not discrediting that and saying that content's bad, but I will say that when we're putting a course together for the UOL, it's, we're working with the authors, and also these authors are vetted. They have a background that most likely is in education and industry and development, and they know what they're doing specifically for the role that we're choosing them for.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll work with these things that we call SMEs, or subject matter experts. So once we have a plan in place, we work with people internal to Epic to kind of check them off. And a lot of the people that we want to create courses with are outside of Epic, and that's a choice because we want to see how people outside of Epic in the professional world are using the tools, and it makes our education, we feel like, more well-rounded because we're getting everyone's point of view.
So I mean, that's a very good point. And so many people, are used to going to YouTube to get, quick, fast learning. Why would I go to Unreal Online Learning instead of going to YouTube? What would be some of the advantages, would you say? Because I can go watch a hour, 15-minute, whatever video on YouTube really quickly. But I don't know whether it's good or bad unless I go follow somebody and I like it and learn to go there because I go back repeatedly. YouTube is it's hard to qualify what I find on YouTube. Of course, what I find on Unreal Online Learning, what you're saying is that it's been vetted, but what are some of the other things that I might like about the way that you're all serving up content on Unreal Online Learning?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do a lot is a large part of our courses, especially deep dives, are going to be project based. So we're going to be providing the assets that really will take people through every step of the way, whether it's a broad subject or it's a smaller subject. And once again, it's not to discredit anybody on YouTube, people out there doing incredible work. But I think what Justin said is a really good point, is we are taking, what we are doing as creators inside of the company. We are getting feedback from not only people who are, really well tapped in the industry and giving us, what we call subject matter experts, doing reviews on our syllabi and sort of the methodology that we're using. But like sort of what Chris Murray said, it's like, it's the source of truth. This is what we consider the definitive ways to learn these topics. And once again, not to discredit anybody on YouTube, but for every individual concept in the engine, you could probably find dozens and dozens and dozens of different approaches. And what I've found is, as an educator in academia, so purely on the academic side, is when I have students come in and they have never used UOL, but they've sort of, in a good way, they've taught themselves some things. They've been proactive. They've gone on YouTube. Very many of those students, their knowledge base is spread out all over the place, and it's a lot harder sometimes for them to zero in on something and focus, because they've had to put together what their knowledge has been from 24 different tutorials to achieve a singular goal, for example, opposed to just following one course that sort of taught them everything, or at least gave them a broad overview. And I really think that we've gamified it in a way too, with the idea of the badges, keeping track of the learning material, and that's something that I think is sets it apart from the other third party platforms that offer individualized authors or people putting that content out. For example, at UT now, I mean, I've fully integrated the badge system into some of my classes and the assessments that we provide on UOL.
Yeah, that's something that we're seeing a lot more, and it's I think it's a great model. We're calling it all sorts of stuff. Flipped learning is, I think, the one that's kind of catching, and it's this idea that because these courses are sources of truth, that as an educator, you can point your students to what we have on there and feel confident that this is the right way forward, and it's accepted in industry, it's accepted at Epic
Absolutely.
Games. Whereas when you find something on YouTube, and there, I'll chime in, there's amazing resources, and there's people out there doing such amazing stuff. Unreal's so big, and there's so many use cases, we couldn't cover it all. So we need the community to go out and show what they're doing and show how to do it their way. But having that fundamental source of truth as an educator is really, really key, because like you said, those students, if all your students, and we see this now becoming really common, and we even use it at Epic Games for our own fellowship and some of our own projects, is using the badges and using these courses and leaning on those to teach the fundamentals and to demonstrate how to use the engine. And then the educator can act as a facilitator, or can spend their time with the student working on projects, or filling in those knowledge gaps and providing the wisdom that they've got in these, and not just spending time trying to show how to navigate a viewport, or even maybe not showing the right way to go about something.
Well, I think that's the nice thing too, is like what you guys are both saying. And then something else I should echo too is that, we do have there's a really high quality bar in terms of like the recording levels, the audio, the editing, everything that's put together. It's very slick package, even the way that it's presented. It's free. And we are constantly putting content up there, and there's a community wrapped around it. And the one thing I've always loved about what Unreal does is they're consistently giving back. They're not just giving back the engine, which is free, and they're not just providing you with education, which is free. They're giving you a marketplace to share your stuff, a store to sell your stuff. So it's like they've created this ecosystem where you can literally build what's in your head. And with the Unreal Online Learning, I personally still love it that a lot of people use YouTube, because that's where I will look forward to see if I can find good authors. And sometimes I still go up and like, hey, what's a good? I think the job of UOL is not to replace anyone. The job of UOL is to just be like, hey, we're here. We're like, we're definitive source. Like, we're trying to give all the information that we know and that has been embedded with us internally, and we want to share it with everyone. And I think it's personally great that if you go on YouTube, there's so many people doing Unreal tutorials, because it means that they're using Unreal and they love it to the point where they want to share their knowledge.
Absolutely.
There's some,
and then and even to speak to what like Deepak's doing, like I teach at a couple schools, and I know that one of them, CG Spectrum, which is all online, they're completely using everything that Unreal's doing, because they're like, hey, we can just integrate this online. This is perfect. And I see that happening to more and more schools in the future, and not just schools, like small studios, large studios. It's good free training that we're really taking the time. We're not just pushing it out. We're taking the time to make sure this is something that we would be proud of, and we're pushing out.
Well, and it's evergreen too, you know, and if it needs a refresh or an update, those are things that are through the system that we use to put it all together. It's very possible, because one of the things that I do love about the YouTube community, or wherever people are posting the sometimes on Vimeo too, is that a feature can come out, be released in an update, and within 24 hours somebody's put together a really 30-minute. But like we're sort of saying, it's like that's the initial reaction video that's explaining the feature, but it's not coming directly from us. So it's really cool that we have that stuff to get people interested, get people up and running. But our courses take a while to produce if we want to get them at that level.
I think there's also some master's courses up there that I've never seen anywhere else, right? Like there's a rendering course, Unreal Engine rendering course that goes so deep into how Unreal Engine renders that I've never seen it explained that way. There's a materials course that I've never seen go into that level of depth. There's the what is the one that Mario and Shore did that is 8 hours of full dissection.
Boot camp or
the boot camp one we did last
the boot
year.
camp, which is unbelievable in its ability to break down the entirety of Unreal in many ways. That once again, I've never the Kickstarter. That's right.
The Kickstarter.
I've never seen anything like that anywhere else, right? And so only
if you're
Epic,
a game developer, that Kickstarter
is
invaluable.
Like it's nothing.
It's like it just turns the key to Unreal Engine.
Right. So if you're coming from another engine anywhere else, you have to go and watch that because you have to show it to your whole studio, right? If you're coming from anywhere else, because it'll give you such insight into what you're walking into with regard to a development tool. And I think those things only exist on Unreal Online Learning. So there are some amazing, like you both said, there are amazing things on YouTube and other video services, but these things only exist on Unreal Online Learning because only these folks can develop them. So they're amazing in that ability to deliver these kinds of depth from the source.
That's a good point, Lewis. It would be really hard for someone on their own to develop this content to this level of quality, and with like Justin mentioned, the subject matter experts who are people at Epic who know this stuff and live and breathe it every day, and the production quality and the timelines that we're giving. It really is. We take a huge amount of pride in the quality of content that we're producing on this. So why don't we take this opportunity to show the folks some of the stuff you guys are working on? Who wants to go first?
I'll switch it up. Justin, you want to go?
I'll go first.
Oh, Lewis wants to go first. You're gonna.
Yeah, you get.
Okay. All right,
let
Justin.
You guys go
so why don't you show us some of the stuff you're working on here?
So this is like older, but I'm going to be rebooting it. This is a course that I did, by the way, if you ever want to check it out. It's just building a detective's office. Originally was going to have follow-ups, which I am, but I'm actually taking this one, which is set up as a blockout, and I'm going to be starting to transition it, hopefully, to create content for UE5 down the road. So yeah, I mean, the whole goal for this one specifically was to show how much work goes into just a small scene. And this is just set up from a blockout standpoint. This is like what I would consider alpha in a way, where everything's in there. There's a base texture, there's a base model. My my naming conventions all set up. I have everything generically placed. I know what I need to make and I know what is missing. And this is possibly something that I might do a print screen, like push Z, get an F11. Do a couple of print screens, give it over to concept bars to do some paint overs to take me a little bit further. But for right now, the goal is to tell a story with a small scene using Unreal by using a lot of repeated assets, but also using content that is broken into pieces so it's better for streaming. And to try to do it using very, very, I'm going to be using decals and just regular materials, nothing super fancy, maybe some blend materials. But that's about where I'm at right now. You can see inside of here, I like to keep my outliner very organized by having I can hide all my props in here. So it's just looking at the structure for right now, or vice versa. I can just hide the structures and just be like, all right, just with this in this area, I have a large chunk of props just with this small area that I want to be able to make it feel like it's actually got a story to tell. So and I think this is one of the things that I'll talk about when I'm teaching my classes. It's like, hey, with a smaller scene, you even get there's so much content going on inside of here. It's not just you have to plan these things correctly. I think that comes from being able to figure out good level design and good setting up with your environment, so that way you're not creating spaces that are so huge and empty that you feel like you need to just load it with content, and then before you know it, your frame rate drops and everything you're loading possibly isn't even doing any content to help tell a story or push the design along. So that's really what I'm doing right now. I'll let you show.
That's so that looks beautiful, by the way. Really cool. Uh, I had a question and then I complimented you and I'd erased the question in my head.
That's how it works with a lot of people.
Your stuff's so beautiful. It blew me away. I mean, first of all, so we're teaching in this course. This is obviously not like a fundamentals. It's not how to get around in Unreal. Looks like we're moving into, teaching not just Unreal and the technology of Unreal, but you're talking about the overall production pipeline.
Yeah.
Centered around Unreal Engine. We're talking about concepts and planning, and these are really important things that, for a company like us doing training material, this is where I think we go a bit beyond maybe where we have to for training material is looking a little bit further into the production of this. And what the thought process. So this course and this content that you're making, I've been following along, and it's really key. Not just like figuring out how to place lights and do light maps in Unreal, which again, we've got lots of content. There's lots of YouTube videos and documentation on all of that, but really seeing how you go from nothing to this point and the amount of work it takes and where to focus your efforts and how to avoid all the pitfalls. Like you said, this is a small area, and I've actually often said that the smaller the space is, the more work it's going to take.
Yeah.
In a forest, you can have a couple of tree models and a couple of bushes and some butterflies, and people will be like, that looks like a forest. But when you're in a space like this, people have I think a lot of they have expectations in their head about what should be here and the variety of things.
So that's the goal for this one. Is like I'm building. Actually, I have another scene of it where I'm actually have a tight street in Brooklyn, and it's going to be raining. So you'll be able to see that, and then this door is going to be opening up into another area. So there's going to be interaction that's going to be added, and then once everything's all done, then I'm going to go back and update the textures and add decals and update models if I see fit. And so right now it's just I'm trying to figure out the base of what I need, and then I'll go back and I'll add more. So that's what and I think that's a big thing, and what I like to talk about as well is I don't start with that. I start with a basic block out to try to get myself knocked down on the layout, the scale, and everything. And if you can kind of see some of this generic block out, if I was to go back over here and actually turn on my collision, I'm reusing, visibility collision, my actual collision. I'm reusing a lot of that collision that I do from a block out for my actual collision. So that's the whole goal is like I'm taking content that I'm making, and I reuse everything. I don't like to throw out anything. So the block out I reuse to make my collision from all my assets. So that way it's there for a purpose. But also if I'm working with a level designer, a gameplay designer, someone else who's actually taking my block out and being like, all right, I'm going to start placing some paths, I'm going to start placing some like triggers and whatnot. I can be over here making everything look pretty while they're over there laying everything out, so we can start working in the same space at the same time, and I'm not stepping on anyone's foot. So that's a huge part of the pipeline. I think with our courses, like we'll introduce the skill sets, but that's why we like to talk about these project-based ones, because when you're working on something with Unreal, when you get into a studio, you're never by yourself. You're working with others. So how do you play well with others?
Absolutely. And it really is about that teamwork and integration and problem solving. Every scene and every project is different, and every team makeup is different.
Yeah.
And so it's really valuable to look in, and this is why we find people like yourself, Justin, and Deepak that know what they're talking about and are good instructors, because we really want to make sure that it is definitive and that it has the authority that it needs to have, and that it has that insight. Justin, you can bring a lot of insight into that process because you have done it before, and what works and what doesn't. Deepak, the same for you. by living in that world and actually, earning your living in that world,
Yeah.
you end up kind of, learning some things along the way about
Sure,
what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And being able to share that with everybody is really key. And we take a lot of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of the things that I think during the production of all of this, we spend an enormous amount of time making sure that when we demonstrate a workflow or a technique, that we make sure that is the right way.
Absolutely.
I think I know when I've done stuff, I have a lot of anxiety about teaching the wrong way, because then that means that whoever's watched that is going to go forth and maybe keep doing the wrong way or teach other people the wrong way.
Another thing to really remember though is that at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's nothing. It's it's kind of like it's like a hammer or a screwdriver. I might hold it different, but it might give me the different result. But Unreal is a tool. It's just an extension of the skill set you have. And I think, I'm well aware that the more that you dive into certain parts of the industry, you might miss other things, which is why the SMEs are so great. And getting to work with people like Deepak and Lewis and yourself and Chris and the whole team is great because we all kind of keep each other on our toes.
Yep.
But the one thing that I think we all share that makes this work so well is that we all are very passionate about helping, whether it's Unreal or whatever. We just want to be able to take what we know and share it. But we all have an enthusiasm. So when we're talking about it, we're like, yeah, we don't want to put you to sleep with it. And we don't want to tell you like, hey, you have to use Unreal. It's like, no, we want you to use Unreal because we love it and we could see what it is. Like when Deepak starts talking about everything he's talking about with film, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what he's saying half the time, but I know he's super excited. So it's like, yeah, I want to watch his courses now.
I have an interesting question for you, Justin. When you work on projects, and I'm curious if you guys have run into this on the Unreal Online Learning team, but when you're working on an environmental piece like that, I'm curious if you've run into people working with Unreal Online Learning that have taken on environment pieces as small teams, because I could imagine that would be actually helpful with regard to reviewing and contributing, primarily from the review perspective, right? Like it's not very common, I think, that actually in a production environment that you make those environments by yourself. And so it can be very hard to look at it objectively when you're only putting your eyes on it. So even in an Unreal Online Learning scenario, it would be interesting to sort of approach that with 2 or 3 people where people are contributing and reviewing it and sort of giving each other critiques, so that in the process of assembling it, modeling it together, lighting it, materialing it together, they're actually able to critique as a group and bring it up, raise the tide together. I'm curious if you've run into that because, working on a game team, that is very common where everyone brings it up together because more eyes are on it.
That's a good point. I mean, honestly, we've talked about doing potential like project-based courses where we have people overlapping, like a level designer sets it up, environment artist will come in, and then kind of working with each other on it. I think that's also why when I initially shared it, I was like, hey, if there's parts where I get stuck, I would screen grab that and I would send it to concept art because maybe I'm stuck on it. I'll give them some reference, be like, hey, I need to figure out this area. You do a paint over, and while you're doing that, I'm going to start blocking out this next area. So that way momentum doesn't stop. But in terms of taking something like this, yeah, there'd be multiple people working on it, especially like, potentially like the lead artist would be the one doing the heavy lifting with the structure. And then, the senior artist might be taking like the larger, more hero set or key pieces on there. It's kind of fun because I had a class this morning with a school in Germany called Pixel Vision, and they're learning a pipeline about literally how to create content for Unreal. And I have them all broken up into teams of 4 and 5, making scenes not that much bigger than this, and they have 8 weeks, and it's literally like they're going through like finding the reference, locking things down, blocking out, making sure the layout's all good, adding the details, breaking it up into pieces so it streams correctly, and then what can you repeat. So it's interesting to see because I'll monitor their Discord channels, and I'll be like, oh cool, that's it. I know sometimes I want to say something, and then someone else will pop in and say it instead. So I'm like, oh cool, good. So yeah, you're right. Like more eyes on something always helps.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just occurred to me with the context. Certainly there are artists, and you see it throughout ArtStation, right? This is my thing, my environment, and of course, you've got very experienced people that can pull, large environments off. But in the context of trying to, do all the materials and all the lighting and build all the assets and do all that stuff, that's a heavy lift for people
Yeah.
people coming into a tool set, and so
Yeah.
that can prevent people from finishing. How many people do I know that have hard drives full of half-finished projects?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I
I think
think,
it's everyone.
yeah, I mean, I think one thing though that's interesting about a lot of the filmmakers is they take on a lot of that stuff on their own. Especially a lot of the independent film. They're utilizing this software to basically try to be a one person show. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'll speak for quite a few people I know. I'm in the process right now of helping on a couple of the VES self study challenge participants, ArtStation challenge, right? And they're all soloing it. They're all solo filmmakers,
Yeah,
and I think one thing that's interesting about the engine, though, and this is something that I talk about in my classes specifically for filmmakers, because there is the art side of things that is separated from what I teach. I do not really teach beyond composition, lighting, sort of layout. I'm not teaching asset creation in any of my courses, whether it's for Unreal or it's for academia. But one thing that I find very important, and I think this helps on the film side of things, is when I make a short film in live action, or if I'm working on a feature, if I'm working on anything, a commercial, nobody ever comes up to me once it's done and asks me if I built that set with my bare hand, right? Or if I made the costumes
Yeah,
that my
yeah,
characters are
yeah.
wearing. And one of the things that I've tried to really talk to a lot of the filmmakers about is assets are out there, asset packs are out there. We have a lot of free assets. You in a way, you do not need to silo yourself off in that way. I'd reach out to collaborators, give yourself a budget. And so when we talk about some of the courses that we're creating on the film side, we're using megascans. Like I don't want you to go spend weeks of your life learning how to model if you're a filmmaker who has no interest really in modeling and texturing.
Unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary.
Absolutely. And so I think that a lot of the way that the game has changed too has been the democratization of assets. I remember when I was an undergrad, the early 2000s, like if I wanted to go online and buy something, it was very expensive for like an individual object. So I sort of had to force myself to learn how to do the just enough to get by in terms of what I wanted to do. Now it's a time versus money thing, I think, for a lot of people. It's if you want to cultivate those other skill sets, and once again, I'm speaking mostly to the film side of things, and not even people from the VFX industry that are coming into this, but like practical filmmakers who want to learn this is a tool. Is like do you want to spend a couple of weeks of your life learning another piece of software, and then getting good at it too, and then modeling your dresser that's going to be in the corner that's not the focus of your piece? Or are you willing to buy an asset pack that's $20 that has all of that stuff and more? And I think what the engine benefits for people like for people like that, for filmmakers who want to be a one person show, is that all of these things are out there, and that sort of is highlight in the course that I just created, which was the independent filmmaking with.
Well, I think the point is that Unreal is massive, and you're not going to be great at all of it, right? So in the context of maybe being a filmmaker, sequencer and tools around sequencer are really important, and Justin's suite of tools, maybe it's the materials and the lighting tools, and maybe now even the modeling tools, because you can do a lot with the modeling tools. You can stub out stuff in DCC and then bring them into Unreal and not have to flip-flop back and forth in and out, because you can now do a whole lot with the modeling tools inside of Unreal. However, if you try and say, well, I'm going to go to Unreal Online Learning and learn all of Unreal, well, I hope that you carve out a nice part of your quarantine to do that. Maybe you can shop online and get your Amazon deliveries lined up and get a really comfy chair, because you're going to need it.
No, and that's the one thing that's kind of exciting. It's like, you just have to know your role with what you want to do. I know my role that I've chose my lane. Doesn't mean I can't change from it, but I want to do environments. I like doing environments. Enjoy able to plan and space out things. I know that I'm not the best at certain things, so that's why, where I would function in development is I would find the people who are the best at modeling and wrapping and texture and be like, hey, you're going to do these key pieces. So you just, like Deepak's saying, like if you're going to be someone who's using the tool to create movies, you're not going to do everything else. You're going to be creating that movie. So don't be hesitant on using these free assets. These things that Unreal is, this is content that's being created and shared. So
yeah. Well, and as a filmmaker, like I'm thinking, you're talking about reusing assets and not having to build stuff. I flipped on and I'm like, well, what about the universal backlot? Like Hollywood's been reusing the same asset packs for a long time. And most people probably don't know that they've seen that same, that same town square in every movie in the 80s.
It's like when Qui-Gon Jinn's using the women's razor.
Right. Or, you've got the Starship Troopers in the train on Firefly. And, it's just, and although they're not remaking every box and prop for every movie, they're going to the prop master and going, hey, you got a bunch of barrels we can put in the back here.
Absolutely. And I mean, it
kind
extends
of what
to VFX
Quixel is now in the marketplaces. And what's cool as a filmmaker is now you can download entire cities and buildings and gyms, and you've got like a free backlot.
Right.
Which, how else would you have done that before? So it's really cool for filmmakers, and a lot of people are discovering how moving into this virtual space, game makers have been doing it forever.
And I feel like game makers do that too. With they're gonna, if you're gonna hire me to build a bunch of assets and Lewis is the boss, he's not gonna be like, we're never gonna use assets again. We'll create an asset library and we'll reuse what we can. And some things might be updated, but you're still never starting from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as things become more complicated and we introduce stuff like PBR, you can now reuse things so much easier because that Coke can that you model now looks like a Coke can in whatever application you put it in. It may need some stylization, but it's that concept of reusing content it's something that we end up talking about a lot here for educators and students, is to understand that I think that there was a time, Justin, you come from that time of the early game days where everything was bespoke in a game, from the engine, every texture was like 64 by 64 and a model had 200 triangles. So,
paint in all the details,
all the lighting, you had to go put that highlight
I used to have to go into for a project. I had to right click and go in and change the XML file to put Havoc into to make something have any type of
physics.
Yeah. Now it's like you can just go up and click a button. I'm like, oh God.
Oh, there it is. But back then everything was very bespoke, and there's a lot of educators that have come from that period, or even 5-10 years ago, not even going back that far, and everything was very bespoke. And I think that there's a change in that concept, even for AAA games, and especially for AA and single A and indie games, leaning on this marketplace stuff, and again, being able to do more with less and not having to learn a million things like, you don't have to learn speed tree anymore. There's plenty of vegetation out there. You can just check that one off. Don't have to learn one more application.
Exactly.
So Deepak, why don't you show us the project that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Y'all can see it. So
yes, sir.
This is the independent filmmaking with Unreal Engine project, and sort of the goal behind this. This is a pretty broad course, but it's meant to be for intermediate level users. So if you're taking this course, you already have an understanding of the interface. You already understand basic concepts in Unreal. But what it's doing in this course, and I'll sort of go in here, I'll open up my master edit sequence, is this entire short that goes, across multiple different levels, from like outer space, inside of a ship.
Wow.
like onto the surface of a planet. This little narrative was all storyboarded out. So I did the sort of traditional process here where I boarded things out. I made a shot list, I did a strip board. I did everything that I would do if I was doing this, live action, or even if it was like a completely CGI animated film outside of the engine. Exact same process. And then what I talk about during this course is how I go through and bit by bit. In fact, I work in this scene mainly, the scene right here. I sort of break down how each individual aspect of this comes together, from the initial layout of the scene here in cinematics, to the character animation of the drone, to the post-processing for the color correction. I basically show how you can take all these different things that would have been sort of separated in traditional film production, and even in a lot of CG workflows, because it's not real time, right? And we sort of talk about how we combine all of those things live in the engine in real time using sequencer and all the other features. So this course, basically, if you download it, you'll get this project file. The video material really only covers this scene right here, but you'll have the entire project to mess around with and sort of open up. What I encourage people to do is actually maybe even try to refilm it, because everything is laid out because we're using a master sequence workflow. So if I want to go in and say edit this scene right here, I just double click, we enter this sequence, I can enter the individual shot, and I can go and change things. But if I go back to my master edit, everything is here. So it's really teaching you how to do a film from start to finish inside of the engine. So one of the really cool things about this too, and this is very hardware dependent though, is we actually, in the levels tab here, we have level streaming on, so we can on the fly load different scenes. You can see that they're popping in between. So we can actually run this at real time with minimal interruption. And then another thing that we've also done with this course is given some levels of interactivity. So just for fun, we've added in a blueprint. Let me see if I can go ahead and open it up here, which allows the user, when they're actually in play mode here, if they've deployed this, to actually control the camera. In a way that in some games you can do that in cinematics, like your analog sticks can control the drift and sway of the camera. But what it allows people to do, can you all see this? Is we have sort of a playback system, and then we also have a system in which you can actually interactively control the camera on a shot-by-shot basis, which for me is kind of fun, because what I love about this, and I'll go to a scene where it's very obvious here, is if I actually pop out of the camera, we'll see the artifice here. We'll see how this is all, just like if we were on a soundstage or if we were on location, it's like, this is another planet, but this is like, some beach with office buildings in the background, residential. I'm just using an HDRI to generate the view through the camera itself, which is what I want to see. So it shows you that a lot of the filmmaking tips and tricks, where it's like, all we're going to see, like we're building this environment just to fit the frame. Like I'm pushing pixels to make this work, on left and right, top and bottom. All of those things that we do in real life. It's like you can imagine the boom operator standing off to the side here trying to get the production audio, right? Like all this stuff is still relevant in Unreal. And, for instance, like, if we look through the frame here, I'm very proud with how this shot turned out. If I pop out of the camera and you sort of see what it looks like here, I mean, you're just like, what is this? I mean, this would not be an interactive level.
Right.
Everything is built with the idea of the cinematic idea of like where my line is, what my coverage is going to be. So it really allows me and other filmmakers to sort of treat this, like I said, as like the medium itself. And so when you build a level, that's one of the differences between what we're doing here, for film and interactive is, it's very much an illusion here. And this course really, from start to finish, whether it concerns layout, gray boxing, putting the levels together, adjusting materials, using material instance parameters to instance, unify your art direction with the Megaskins assets. It's really sort of like, I would consider an essential course for filmmakers as they join the Unreal ecosystem looking to make short. And once again, every piece in this, the limitation that was put on me as a filmmaker was, all of this needs to be. So these are every single asset here is free or kit bashed. Like for instance, this spaceship right here, this colony ship is actually a blueprint. So there was no actual, spaceship. So this is like from some sci-fi kit. Like the main part of the ship here, I believe, that's like a pill bottle, right? And these things are just desks. Right? So you put them all together in a blueprint and you can create, of course, would not hold up to scrutiny close up, but you can, you work with scale and you can create customized stuff for the engine too. And it's all about, to me, it goes back. What I loved about putting this together is it reminded me of when I was a kid and I was first learning filmmaking. I would do a lot of work with miniatures and stop motion. And I would have to kit bash things together with like egg cartons and like styrofoam and stuff like that to make my little scenes. And I had a lot of flashbacks when I was doing this, and it really, what it exposed to me. I was thinking about this like it was subconscious, but it was like this is like you can do pure filmmaking, cinematic filmmaking in the engine. It's just instead of using my hands to put things together like this, I'm using the mouse and the keyboard. But so many concepts carry over, and the greatest thing about this to me is a filmmaker, and I think this applies to a lot of people who end up wanting to use the engine to make films. Is you can make projects that you can make films, you can translate stories or ideas that you have into actual reality in ways that would not be possible. I mentioned my thesis film at UT Austin that took 6 weeks to render. It's like that. I'm not joking when I say that started my real-time journey, because like I had to find a different. If I were to make anything that complex again, I would be using Unreal. Like, I mean, there's no question. And I would work with the tool to figure out the solution for my project. I wouldn't just go in being like, I'm going to use Unreal. Like I would say, I'm going to use Unreal because of this, and this, and then I would make that my objective. So I would definitely recommend people check this course out. If they're filmmakers, and even if you're not a filmmaker, but you just want to see how we're using the engine for filmmaking. Yeah.
Would it be fair to say you use the engine like duct tape?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things.
Gaffer's tape.
If you go back in here, I'll share the screen again. Like if you go in and you really see, how this stuff is put together. Like, I'm popping out of the camera here. It's like, you'll see this stuff fall apart like immediately. Like, and that's sort of, to me, what's sort of fun about this is you understand then the total control. I mean, that's the spaceship, right? It's something from one of the sci-fi kits that I modified just a little. I didn't even modify it that much. And that's how I got this shot. Like, so it looks good through here. I mean, but if I'm framing this up in any other way, the illusion is broken. And
space clouds.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's so many things that carry over, and I think it's just super important for filmmakers to realize that you're not starting from scratch. I think that's the most important thing that I can say is you are not starting from scratch. Any foundation that you already have is going to be useful when you bring it into the engine, apply it in the engine. It's not like you've hit some reset button and you are going to be lost in the woods. I'm very positive when I tell people that like you're just going to continue to build upon that, albeit in sort of the digital realm here. But as we get further into the way that this technology is utilized and democratized, not everyone's going to have an LED wall, but quite honestly, if you have a VR headset and you have a green sheet, you could do a DIY tracked camera setup, with hybrid live action. These are things that will be hopefully. But, we can take the super high end stuff that people are doing, and we can figure out at UOL, we can figure out democratized, scalable work for everybody.
So I want to ask you about how we manage to keep up with our own stuff. So, we've shown a bunch of cool stuff, and we've talked about all of this stuff that's happening with film and game and modeling tools. And We've even talked a little bit about the Unreal Engine 5 and Nanite and Lumen. How, as you know, how do we at Epic and UOL approach this kind of changing landscape? Because this is something that's, I think, really challenging for educators in academia, people building YouTube videos, and even people learning. I think a lot of people are at a point right now that they're asking, what should I be learning? Should I be learning baking from a high to low poly model? Should I be learning should I be learning landscape? Should I be learning, where should I go? Because obviously 2021 is next gen consoles are out, ray tracing cards are everywhere. Unreal Engine 5 is on the horizon. How are we kind of tackling that? What kind of things are we keeping in mind as we're producing stuff for this year? And kind of, can we give everyone maybe just a clue as to kind of what we're looking at moving into this year and as Unreal Engine 5 launches?
Justin, why don't you start with the game?
I mean, honestly, it's just collaboration, communication, collaboration, and then admitting to everyone that sometimes we don't know what we're doing. And when I don't mean that in like, we don't know what we're doing, it's like, if we keep on like talking to each other about, hey, what do you like, we have to, obviously having access to the tools changes everything, but in terms of like, is it going to change how everything is made? Yes and no, but here's the reality. There's so many productions in place right now that are still using Unreal 4 that are not going to pump their brakes and be like, all right, everything's going to change. It's still going to be in transition. And I'll tell you right now, I still use a lot of the tips and tricks that I used when I was in PlayStation 1 for this stuff now. So I don't think anything's really like, obviously there's going to be change, but I don't think it's going to be to the point where we need to think about a brand new way of doing things. I think we're just going to take what we've been doing as always and just it's refining certain steps along the way. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the pipeline, is that the pipeline doesn't really ever change. You're either manipulating or adding a couple steps along the way. There's still a pre-production, a production, a post-production. It's just sometimes you'll get these tools that possibly allow you the option to omit a couple steps. And maybe there's a new piece of software that's added that may work, that might not work. I mean, like we've all been to many GDCs and SIGGRAPHs, and there's like, hey, here's a new piece of software. You're like, this is going to change everything, and then it doesn't. Every single year, it's like we're going to have the magic unwrap button, and it's like, all right, cool, we're still waiting for that. But the biggest thing I would say to anyone that's ever, the only reason why I've lasted this long in the industry is because I've always leaned back on like the basics of design and elements of design, and like just making sure that I'm really thorough with being able to communicate and collaborate, and then like really say like, hey, I don't know what's up next. Can we work on this together? And that's why, specifically for game development, I'm seeking out and working with these authors that have their finger on the pulse for certain disciplines that I necessarily don't. Like I just got done talking to a super talented technical artist. I'm like, this is great. He's like bringing up all these things that I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that, which changes the way that I might approach creating the education for that. So I think the one thing that's always been like a huge thing that which makes the UOL really work is that we all support each other. If I don't know something, Deepak's ready to help me. Chris is ready to help me. The whole team, like Cole, like everyone on the UOL team is super like they just want to help each other. And if they don't know something, we're going to figure out something together. And I think that's again why would I say use UOL? It's because there's such a passion to help each other learn these things. And obviously, like you hear about like you see the demos of UE5 and you're like, hey, how does this mean we can put unlimited polys in there? Unless you have an amazing system. I mean, there's always going to be a budget, and that budget's always going to require some sort of workaround. And now, what that is, like, you might be able to have some elements where you don't have to do a bake, but you're still going to bake some things. It's just how it is.
I think to your point, and I'll let you say what you're going to say in a minute. But the minute you allow people to do more, things get bigger, right? That's just the way that things have always happened, right? PlayStation 1 was like, that's great, let's do PlayStation 2. Oh, well, let's also make things bigger and crazier and more. And then let's go to PlayStation 3 and 4 and now 5. Great, let's make things bigger and crazier and fancier. And that's always going to be the case. And I think that that's the trajectory that seems to be apparent, right? Open world gaming and more cinematic storytelling seems to be the trajectory. So what does that require in many ways, which is to go from these ideas of core principles of understanding the tool sets to applying those principles to bigger, more cinematic, dynamic, open, give more player agency to where wherever you go, there's a story there waiting for you that gives you more immersion in gameplay. And that requires more understanding of how to do what you want to do in the tool sets, which is applying all the things you're going to learn, in a place like Unreal Online Learning, and then being able to craft an experience there. But I just I'm sorry, Deepak, you were going to say.
Oh, no, I guess, for me, what I see, this year and in the V5 is the further democratization of making this easy to a degree. I think on the film end, especially, the idea of optimization is tough right now. If you don't have that background, and a lot of solo filmmakers or even small groups of people, people who are not studio based or not, have not been through VFX and understand the pipelines, but they still have the talent to put together a good layout, create a good scene, create a good composition. A multitude of different things. I think they're gonna feel rewarded, as this technology continues to move, because the technical limitations that have sort of held us back, in terms of the stuff you've even, that have been made public in the demos, it's like, it's really going to open up the scope of what we can do. And I think, at least what you were saying in regards to even games becoming more cinematic, it's like the further we get to this convergence, the closer we get where our industries are colliding, right? The easier it becomes to share legitimate resources. Like no longer will the film models be sort of gated because of resources. If people are working on properties that could share those assets, right? We could figure out easier pipelines to get the models that are used for cinematics into the game pipelines and stuff like that. But I think looking forward to the rest of 2021, like I said before, what I'm really excited about on our end, because we don't have the foundation just yet that Justin has created his courses, is really getting that core group of courses out there for film, so they can feel like they have enough knowledge and they're ready to jump into whatever they want to do. I think as we go forward and as things keep moving, it's like the biggest thing is this stuff just gets cheap and it's more affordable if we're talking about things like that. Of course, if people can get their hands on a graphic, but the barrier to entry is so much lower.
And then like something that like Lewis brought up, it's like, again, every single console transition, there's more powerful tools, there's more memory that can be used. So it's like, obviously, like before, I remember playing Resident Evil when it first came out. It's like you didn't really see much movement. And then when they were talking, you're like, oh my God, terrible dialogue, but like it was blowing your mind. And now it's like we have the ability to put the bones in the hands and grab things and have normal maps animate and everything. So we can really get in there and give the expression to tell those stories with those cinematic tools. But I still think, as we see all those push forward with the AAA games, you're going to see people who are like, man, but I really miss the old times. And you'll see indie games just keep growing.
Yeah.
So I like that there's that nice balance. Like, it's not just, like nothing but AAA. I like that there's that hardcore team of people that was like, I got an idea, I'm going to make it. And sometimes it comes out quick. Sometimes they're, doing like what Cuphead did. And it's just like, oh man, that took forever, but you can tell. So, no, I'm very excited about what's happening with games, and being someone who grew up in the golden era of games and seeing where everything's going, it's awesome to see that this industry, and knock on wood, that it did so well in 2020. So I think that's another thing that should really empower people to check out what we're doing with the Unreal Online Learning, is because it's all free content that's going to give you the education to learn how to do these things that me and Deepak are able to do, and then you can make your own themes.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about convergence, and I think all four of us come from, fairly unique backgrounds with crossover. And then the thing is, real time kind of ties them all together. I come from, games and viz, and come from games and film, and Lewis comes from everything. Um, and it really speaks. We're all now in the same room together talking about using do all this together, and that will just continue. You look at modern games, and the cinematography that's in them is on par with what
Absolutely.
Hollywood produces, and they are pushing for that level of quality with the depth of field and the lighting and the character quality, and we're pushing for that as well. And you can imagine that line is just blurring. And as we're building cities, there are architects who are helping game developers build cities, and game developers helping architects build buildings that people traverse better. It's a really cool time, and to be able to find those resources to be able to do the thing that you need to do, I think is one of the big advantages of the UOL, is because it started off very kind of visualization enterprise focused, but over the last 3 years, the breadth of content that has been presented on there now, if you're working on a film production and you need to know how to do layout, you can take Justin's course.
Yep.
You need to know how to do, some basics. I just can't get around the viewport. That's in there. You need to do audio. That's in there. So, as it becomes broader and deeper, but we maintain that authority and that source of truth. That's just a huge resource for learners and educators to have that out there. And as things become more mixed together, I think people will end up just kind of picking and choosing the things that they need to accomplish the tasks that they want. So we're heading up to the end of the stream here. This has been really fantastic. I want to thank you guys for sharing your stories with us, and sharing your work with us, and sharing your thoughts and your opinions. This was a really great chat. We will be back next week on Tuesday again for another awesome educator stream. I do want to let you guys know that we have a survey this week. We have heard your calls in the chat. Where do I get the swag? Tom and Lewis keep wearing sweet things, and I want sweet things. Well, I went and talked to all the bosses, and they said, we'll give them some sweet things, but they need to fill out a survey. So we've got a survey for you to fill out. It's pretty straightforward. We're curious to learn who's watching and what do you do. So it's a very simple survey, just your name, email, and what are you? Are you a teacher, a student, a hobbyist? And then what's your shirt size? And then we will choose our winners tomorrow before end of day. So be sure to fill out that survey today. If you're watching the video on demand stream of this, sorry, do tune in to our live streams for a chance next time. So fill out that survey, and tomorrow I will draw a winner, and I will let you know who has won some sweet Unreal Engine / Epic Game swag.
So the URL is now up on your screen, as well as the QR code. So you can use your phone and fill out the survey, or you can go on your computer and fill out the survey. Either one will work just fine. So the QR code, you can take a picture of it with your mobile device, and that will take you to the URL, or you can just punch it into your computing device.
You might have one of those if you are watching the stream. So Justin, Deepak, Lewis, do you have any final comments before we head out today?
Just have fun with what you're doing. Like, I know we are throwing a lot of content at you. There's a lot of options on doing things. There's so much content on UL to watch. For example, I have to watch something 3 times for it to sink in. So it's just how I function. So just really figure out how you function, and treat the courses potentially like a buffet line. Like, hey, try a couple of them, and then maybe if there's one that really strikes your interest, go back and watch that, and then try to follow on and practice. But these are skills that they're going to help you in so many different industries. So take advantage of them.
Yeah, I want to echo.
You didn't have them when I was younger.
I want to echo what Justin's saying about taking advantage of stuff that may even not be in your wheelhouse. Because like we're talking about this convergence, it's like if you're a filmmaker, like I think it's worth diving into the interactive capabilities of the engine, because you never know, like it could automate something for you. You might be working on a project where that's a large part of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ride along with what.
And I go along with what that Tom and Lewis say. So the flow.
The circle of agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
And my advice is really simple: is with tools as large and as capable as Unreal. Remember, you can make Fortnite in Unreal. However, don't make Fortnite in Unreal. Why? Because Fortnite's made by a very large team of people that developed the tool. Instead, what I always used to tell students was that you need to start out with small victories, right? I knew lots of students that tried to make a character when they never made a character before in something like ZBrush, and they would introduce and if not choose mediocrity intentionally, and that would be very heartbreaking for them. Instead, I would say make a belt buckle, make the best belt buckle, and don't make a full character until you have a pretty good belt buckle, because you will be really happy with yourself. And then maybe you'd make a belt with a belt buckle, and then go from there to pants or something, or a shoe. But if you go for a full character and you're really disappointed, you may never make anything else again. Whereas if you make a really good belt buckle or a really good shoe, then you're like, oh, I'm going to go for the pants and the shoes. The point being is that small victories lead to successful wars that you win, and those are wars with yourself more than anything else. And so Unreal Engine is exactly the same thing. If you're like, I'm going to make Fortnite or RPG MMO, or I'm going to do this whole massive monolithic thing, you may not. And once again, that leads to hard drives full of half-finished projects. If you finish a very small, any one of these courses, you will actually begin the momentum you need to launch everything and anything. So start small and win and succeed, and those small little battles will lead to victories that may launch careers. And there are so many opportunities for careers in real time and with Unreal Engine right now that I think all of us have changed our lives because of it in one way or another. So by all means, with regards to free tools, free learning, and advice from a lot of people that have taken advantage of it, go forth and succeed.
Awesome. That is the right advice. Unreal is really huge. Pick your battles, and yeah, try and finish something. Try and make that thing actually happen. And the feeling you get from even a small victory is phenomenal. Getting just even a basic game packaged and running, and you can show your friends, is astounding. And so, yeah, don't set yourself up for failure. Use these resources, use this advice, and have fun. Have fun with it. It really is. It's the most fun you can have right now on a computer, as far as I'm concerned. Who needs to play video games when you can just make them all day long? Well, go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I was going to say, what Lewis said is 100% right. Don't there's a reason why even our courses take time, because it takes time to do anything in this engine, and it takes time to make games and make movies. It takes teams and budgets. So when you're trying to do these things, start off little, and take the momentum, that rush you get from understanding and making something, and either share it with your friends. So it's kind of like if I told you where I live, I don't remember my address by the street names, but if I have to describe it to someone, then you have to break. So it's like if you learn something, pass the knowledge on or share, like get excited. And, you know, that's what I did in college. I still keep touch with a lot of my buddies, and we still take each other on to like learn things and do things, but we always do it in small pieces, never huge. Yeah, because it's like, you know, yeah, just small, like what Lewis said.
All right.
Well, thank you, Justin, and Deepak, and
Thank
Lewis
you for having us. Yeah.
for co-hosting. No, thank you for taking your time to be here. This was phenomenal. You were excellent guests, and thank you for everyone who joined us today on the chat and is watching the stream. Remember, fill out that survey, and good luck to you on getting some sweet Unreal stuff. All right. That about wraps it up for us this week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Tom. Bye, guys.
We do like that.
Yeah.